Hi everyone, my name is Pablo. In this video, I'm going to demo SD access or software-defined access fabric provisioning on Cisco DNA Center. Okay, as part of some of the previous videos I've done, I have onboarded these 4 devices. So these 2 having been onboarded via the plug and play workflow, and these 2 down here via the LAN automation workflow. I have provisioned those devices into their respective sites, as well as completing a network device provisioning on those, such as AAA settings, DNS, DHCP, so on and so forth. So that was done in a previous video. As part of this demo, then I'm going to provision this fabric site, and for that I'm going to follow the steps here. So create a fabric site, create a transit network. In this case, we're going to use an IP transit network. And I'm going to assign the transit network to those border nodes as a layer 3 handoff, and the fabric roles to all of those devices. So these 2 on top will get the border node and control plane functionality or role, and these 2 at the bottom will then be the edge nodes. Okay, so the layer 3 handoff happens in here. So the DNA Center automates everything related to the fabric, but nothing outside of it. The DNA Center will automate the configuration on these links, and we'll have to do this manually. Okay, so on my topology then, the DNA Center will automate these 2 links in here from this perspective, and this configuration here will have to be done manually. I had done the fusion part in advance, so what I'm going to do is just review what I had put in there. Okay, let's go on to DNA Center. Just as a recap, then if I go to provision inventory, I have then put 1, 2, Edge 1, and Edge 2 devices. Those have been assigned a role in there. But as I mentioned, this role in particular is for building the topology view within DNA Center. Okay, some reason it's showing up as red in there. We can take a look at that. Actually, provision status failed. Let's look at the provision focus. Let's see if we can find out what went wrong. Okay, so seems like it was unreachable at one moment. Let's do a quick provision of that device. So all that config will be provisioned now. We'll see if we can get rid of that failed or that red indication on that particular device. That's been configured in there. Okay, seems like that succeeded this time. I'll pause the video and I'll wait until this finishes up. Okay, so that has finished. As part of the provisioning, I see that it had some extra configurations in there related to the telemetry settings. So for assurance telemetry, so that's fine now. So that's all the steps have been succeeded. The DNA Center is just doing the config diff in there, so it will take roughly 5 minutes to complete. Since like that's still showing up in there, picking up the previous, it will probably go away soon. But if I go to topology, then everything is red. Sorry, not red, but green. Okay, so let's go to provision and then look at our transit networks as a start. So if I go back to the slides, we said that our transit network will be then this over here. So towards the fusion, will use autonomous system 65001. So I had created that in advance. So just create a transit, IP based. It's going to be BGP, and the autonomous system I have put in there. So I have created that already. If we go to our virtual networks, then we can then create a couple of virtual networks that I'm going to use in this lab. So one of them will be, let's just name it Corp. Actually, I think I had clicked the wrong workflow in there. So let me back out of that. It's not there. So these are virtual network policies. Should have gone in here into the virtual networks. So let's name it Corp. And I'll create another one for guest. So that's part of my macro segmentation strategy. So all my corporate devices will go into this virtual network, and any guests will then go into the guest virtual network. So any device in the corp VM will not have access to the guest users. Okay, so let's go to fabric site, create a fabric site, or actually I had already created this in advance. So let's just delete this just for the purpose of the demo. So you would land in here. So create a fabric site, expand that. My site will be at the Endpoint level. That's enabled there by default. I'm going to use close authentication here. So this is for 802.1x authentication or endpoint authentication. I'm not concerned with fabric zones at the moment, so I'll leave it for later. And let's hit deploy. So that would be my fabric site. That's completed in there. And I can then look at that fabric in particular. So I can go into that now, and I can see the devices in there. So they're all gray in color, which means that they're not part of a fabric, but we're going to change that. Before we do that, let's do host onboarding and virtual networks. And we're going to make sure that we assign the virtual networks to this particular site that we need to use. The infrastructure VN, it's in the global routing table. That will be used for our access points, for example. So update that, and there's our VNs in there added to this particular fabric site. If you go to our fabric infrastructure, so then I will start adding the roles to these devices. So I'm going to click in the border one first. I'll enable the control plane first. So this is sort of relating to the SDA version 1 and SDA version 2, so where we use Lisp publisher and subscribe. Okay, so that's the control plane functionality there, and now we can do the border functionality. So let's enable that layer 3 handoff. The autonomous system for the fabric, as we've seen in the slide, is 65,000. So I'm going to enable that. So then these two checkboxes are in terms of what routes are going to be imported, or if this is going to be the default exit in the fabric for that particular border. So this will be our default for all virtual networks, or the default exit point for this fabric. And I'm not interested in importing external routes in particular, as I'll be introducing a default route in there. At transit site, so an IP transit, let's select from an IP pool. I have created this IP pool for Proto 1 and Fusion, and I'm going to then select an interface. So in my case, I have interface 48 connecting to that Fusion device. In here now we have the ability of hard coding IP addresses, VLANs, and stuff like that, which we didn't have in the past. But right now I'm only hard coding the VLAN for this particular device. So I'm going to do the infrastructure VL 3001 and 3002 for the core VN, and I'll leave that empty, so the DNA Center will automatically assign that based on the IP subnet that I selected here. So I'm going to add that there. If I click details, I can then see some of the configuration that it's going to be pushing there. Okay, if I click add, then that kind of gets a blue highlight in there, meaning that it's ready to be fabric enabled. I just wanted to check here because I believe there's a section here, unless it's not going to tell me until I click deploy. Okay, let's go with border 2 for now. So again, control plane, border node, layer 3, 6500, IP transit, and let's select the IP pool, in this case B2 to Fusion. Same interface for this border 2, Corp 1, and Infra VM. So Corp, in this case, will be 3011, and Infra VM will be 3010. Okay. My configuration there, add that, and I can then deploy that. If I go to the Fusion side of things, I can do show run section router BGP, so we can get an idea there. So I had pre-configured router BGP 6001. We can see then some stuff is happening there as DNA Center is already deploying configuration on the borders. So as I was saying, router BGP 6001, I've configured that in advance. So I have my, let me just clean that output a little bit. So I have the config there for the Corp VRF. I had also created or defined the Corp VRF for that to happen. And if I look at the borders, border 1 and border 2, the DNA Center would have also configured the BGP settings on that border, as well as the Lisp configurations in there. So all the Lisp configurations have been provisioned on that border. Same for border 2, so show run section. We can actually see that the BGP adjacency has come up as well. The two of them for the infra VN and for the Corp VN. Okay, and I can do here as well show run section Lisp, and that's all the configuration there from the Lisp control plane functionality. On the fabric edge, I still show run section Lisp. There's no configuration there so far because we haven't enabled that function on that device. Okay, from a border perspective, we can just confirm the BGP configuration. IPv4. So we had our two adjacencies in there. So there's the R adjacency in there. But actually, I just see that this is coming up as idle in there. Let me check on the border 2. coming up as idle as well. So show IP interface brief. So 3002, 3011, so these are up. And VRF Corp, so 3002 and 11, I see that these interfaces have been removed from the VRF for some reason. So VRF. And let's put an IP address again on it. So this is the same here. So okay, now they're showing up as up. Same should be from this side. Okay, super good there. If I do show IP route BGP, then I have my default route being advertised here from the Fusion perspective, show run section. So I'm just originating that default route into my peers. Okay. I can do as well show IP route VRF Corp BGP. So on Corp as well is learning that default route. Okay, so that's our borders added in there, or provision from a layer 3 perspective. And on DNA Center, we can see now they're showing up as blue colored filled color, which means that they're part of the fabric. From an edge perspective, it's much easier. So just do edge. Same for this one. And deploy that. Go to logging into the edge 1 device. So I can do show run section list. There is no configuration in there. DNA Center should be pushing that up in a few seconds. So I can see DNA Center now. It's try to log in there and configure. Let's give it a couple more seconds. And we now see then a Lisp interface coming up. If I do show run section Lisp, you can then see that configuration being pushed onto that edge device. Okay, so we have provisioned our SD access fabric. We can look at then see how can we onboard devices from an authentication perspective. So right now, let's do a corp virtual network IP pool set assignment. So let's add. It's going to be corp data. And let's give it a name of corp. And it's going to be data traffic. Okay. This is also going to serve as a wireless pool. Let me see. Okay, it's not going to be a bridge. Service group, security group. We'll leave it as that. So I think we got all the information there we need. So I'm going to deploy that. And it should also configure that on the edge device. Give it a couple of seconds while that deploys, and we're going to go to ICE in this case. See if we can get one of the authentication and authorization policies up and running. So let's go to policy and policy element results. Let's go into authorization profiles. Let's add a corp data VM, and let's assign a VLAN to it. We had named that VLAN corp. Okay, let's submit that. Let's go now to policy sets. There's nothing configured in here, so I'm going to add one new. So this will be 802.1x. Let's go with either wired or wireless 802.1x. It's an OR. So let's give it default, save. Expand that. Let's look at the authentication. So again, that would be 802.1x wired or wireless. Let's use all user and ID stores. Save that. And on authorizations, let's create one for, let's say, AB 802.1x. So let's go with let's go with the identity group, but we're looking at the external identity group. Let's select the external groups from the domain, and if it's a lab admin, let's use that. Let's assign it to the corp data VM. Let's assign an SCT. Assign it as employee for now, just to test. Okay. So what I'll do now is I'll log into my hypervisor to get one of the endpoints or Windows 10 endpoints. And that VM is shut down. Let me just turn it on now. I'll pause the video while that reloads, and once it's back, I'll unpause. Actually, while we wait, let's see if we can do something useful here. Let's go here to authorization and downloadable ACLs. Let's say domain computers, and let's create a DACL. I'll pause and I'll transcribe everything. Okay, let's save that. And let's go to create another authorization profile. Let's call it domain computers. We'll assign a tackle, the one that we just created. And again, a VLAN. Corp. Okay, so let's submit that. Go back to our policy sets. Here's the 1x. Let's add one above. And let's do here. Actually, we'll have to download that group before we can assign it. So let's say that now for a second. Let's go to external identity sources. And groups. Add groups. So we retrieve all the groups. And we get the domain computers. Save that. And now let's go back to our policy sets. Authorization. We'll change that to, seems that hasn't taken changes yet. So I have another look. Domain computers is there. Give another look. It's just a matter of refreshing the page. Oh, there we go. Domain computers. So let's use domain computers profile. Let's give it a trusted device. Okay. So let's reboot that device. Once it restarts, I'll come back. Okay, so that device, it's just finishing up rebooting in there. So we're at the login screen. From an edge perspective, if we inspect the authentication sessions for that port, you can see then the VLAN, which is the VM or the virtual network, the ACL or the downloadable ACL, and the SCT value. If we check for the CTS environment data, you can see that that value of 2 is for trusted devices, and the ACL show access list, and then that name. So that's the downloadable ACL we configured in ICE. Okay, from an ICE perspective, then, if we look at the Redis live logs, you can see then that that machine has hit the authentication rule that we set up, and it's been authorized with the domain computer authentication or authorization profile. Now we can log that in. And as that machine logs in, we should then see a change of authorization or re-authentication happening, and a new policy being assigned to that port. Let's run again this show authentication sessions on that port. So we see in this case .1x authentication success, but now we're on SCT value number 4, and our username is then my AD user. So again, that SGT value of 4 means employees. That goes in line with what we had configured in our policy sets, and from a radius perspective, we can see then it's hitting the correct policies in there. Just once more, looking at the policy sets, we're hitting the 802.1x, and we have the two rules, one for domain computers with a trusted devices SGT, and one for the AD users, in particular for the lab admins, with a different profile and a security SGT of employees. Okay, so hopefully that was of help to you. So if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out directly to me.